Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and if you've ever wanted to get a Tier 8 premium tank for free, well, now's going to be your opportunity. There's going to be a set of marathon missions coming up so you can get your hands on the FV4202, well, its replacement tank, as a Tier 8 premium British medium. Or perhaps you're feeling nostalgic for the old FV4202 model, or a tank collector. I'm going to let you know how you're going to be able to get your hands on one of these tanks again for free in the upcoming month, give you tips and tricks as to how you can do the grind as effectively as possible, and also run down all of the new stats. As the FV4202 moves to a Tier 8 premium medium tank, and is it still competitive compared to a lot of its other Tier 8 counterparts? The last time there was a mission marathon, at least on the European server, was for the WZ111, which was last September in 2015. Being able to get a Tier 8 premium for free is a fantastic opportunity for players who don't already have a Tier 8 premium tank. And if you're a keen player who plays this game completely for free, then I thoroughly recommend checking out this FV4202 marathon. So it's likely you're wondering, when will this marathon be? Well, it's a bit confusing because for different servers there's different dates that it's going to be running. For example, on the Russian server it's running from the 1st of February to the 15th of February. And on the Asia server it's going to be running from the 5th of February to the 19th of February. Currently the North American server has not made an announcement as to when the event will start, and neither has the European server, but rumor has it that it's going to be starting on either the 15th or the 18th of February for 14 days on Europe. So what do you have to do to be able to get an FV4202 for free? So firstly, you must have unlocked and also purchased the Centurion Action 10 to be able to take part in these missions. And the reason for that is that the FV4202 was originally replaced by the Centurion Action 10 as the Tier 10 British medium tank. And so if you haven't quite got there yet, or you haven't purchased one, you better get moving and get the credits or the experience that you require if you want to take part in this mission marathon. Next, you must use the Centurion Action 10, only the Centurion Action 10, to get 750 base experience points in a single random battle, which you can complete once a day, and you'll get 3 times crew experience for that battle, which is a nice little perk. If you do this 10 times out of the 14 days that this mission marathon will be available for, you will get yourself a medium tank gun rammer for free. So step 1 of this mission marathon is to play the Centurion Action 10 once a day for at least 10 out of the 14 days and get 750 base experience points. Now this part does sound very easy, but it does require you to play for 10 out of the 14 days, even if it's only for 10 minutes, because you're likely to be able to do this in your first round or 2. Nevertheless, if you work away from home or you're going on holiday, you might want to take your laptop to be able to get that 10 out of 14. So next is a part that actually requires you to play quite a lot. You have to cause 450,000 damage over any number of random battles in Tier 8 to 10 vehicles only. I'd like to clarify that you do not have to only play the Centurion Action 10 to be able to complete this mission. You can play any Tier 8 to Tier 10 that you want. You could play your Tier 8 premiums and make a huge amount of credits. Or you could play your Tier 10 tank destroyers and race through that 450,000 damage cause. So let's just do a quick bit of theory crafting as to how long this might take you. Let's say, for example, you're playing Tier 10 and you're an average player and you do 2,000 damage a game, which is pretty much the average health of your tank, right? So that means you're going to have to play 225 games of World of Tanks to be able to complete this 450,000 damage done. Now let's imagine that each one of your rounds is 5 minutes long, or each one of your rounds is 10 minutes long. How long is this actually going to take you playing wise? Now if each one of your games is 5 minutes long, this is going to take you 18 hours to be able to get the damage that you need over the 14 days. However, if each one of your games is 10 minutes long and you play roughly 6 games an hour, it's going to take you 37.5 hours to be able to complete this mission grind. However, let's imagine that you're a Tier 8 player and you average 1,000 damage a game. That means that you're going to have to play 450 games to be able to complete this mission, which, if each of your games lasts 5 minutes long, that's 37.5 hours. However, if they're 10 minutes long, that is going to be 75 hours of World of Tanks in 14 days' time. And that is actually a hell of a lot of playing. That's playing 5 hours a day if you're able to do 1,000 average damage. However, let's imagine that you're a pink fluffy unicorn and you like to play your Waffenträger Alpha E100 and you're a beast, then how long is that going to take you? Well, if you average 3,000 damage a game, it's going to take you 150 games, which is 12.5 hours at 5 minutes or 25 hours at 10 minutes. And when you factor that in, then it's not actually too bad at all. That means you have to play for less than 2 hours a day to be able to complete the 450,000 damage. One thing that I think is good about this mission is that you can play whatever tank you want at tier 8 to tier 10. And so that gives you a hell of a lot of flexibility, and this won't really feel like a grind at all. There's probably about 100 different tanks that you could play to complete this mission. And with such variety available, I don't really see that being a grind unless you truly despise playing high tier tanks. If you complete this mission, you're going to be rewarded with an enhanced gun laying drive. That's 250,000 credits, a nice little perk there. Hold on, a gun laying drive for a medium tank mission? What the hell have they done to the aim time? No! And then that's it. If you manage to fulfill both of these conditions, you only have to play a single game, and then you will be rewarded with an FV4202, a tier 8 premium British medium tank in your garage, with a garage slot and a 50% crew that you're likely going to dismiss and then put your Centurion Action 10 crew into the FV4202 every time you want to play it. Now, while at least in my opinion this is the easiest mission marathon that Wargaming have ever done, let's take a look to see if the tank that you're going to be getting is even worth it. On the Russian portal today, Wargaming released the statistics of the new FV4202 at the bottom of the page. You can also see the armor model, and after checking against the statistics on TanksGG, they're the same as what we currently have in our clients. As you would expect, when you change a tank from being tier 10 regular to a tier 8 premium, there are going to be some very heavy nerfs to the vehicle. So firstly, that wonderful 105mm that was on the FV4202 when it was at tier 10 has been changed with a slightly worse 20-pounder that is currently on a Centurion 1. I really don't like the accuracy on this gun. 0.35 is positively un-British, and the aim time, 2.6 seconds, that's absolutely horrific for a medium tank. Next, the mobility of the tank has been made worse. I cannot believe it. It only has a 35km/h top speed limit. That makes this vehicle literally the slowest tier 8 medium tank in the game, premium or not. And if you were hoping it was going to have a great horsepower just like the FV4202 did at tier 10, it's only got 510 horsepower. And considering that the vehicle still weighs 41 tons, that gives it a horrific power to weight ratio of just over 12. Thankfully, the tank traverse speed is decent at 40 degrees, and the terrain resistances are also very nice, so it's quite likely that the mobility isn't going to feel too bad even on soft terrain. Thankfully, the gun depression is still an excellent 10 degrees. The hull armor has been butchered though. It's now only 50 at the front, 50 at the side, and 31 at the rear, which means that even if you angle the tank quite well like this, you have 100mm of effective armor, and you're going to have to exaggerate the angle and hope that the armor angle goes above 70 degrees, which means that every shell is going to ricochet outside of an overmatch from a gigantic caliber round hitting your tank. Just to put things into perspective, the hull armor of the old FV4202 used to be 121 at the front, and the turret armor used to be 196, 196, and 35. That is certainly no longer the case. The frontal turret armor is 170 with 90mm at the side. When we investigate the collision model, we can see that actually there's some fairly good armor around the turret, 200mm, which protects this rather large turret ring. But 200mm is still 200mm flat. That isn't going to hold up very well against tier 8 plus tanks, but at least it will allow you to bounce tier 6 and tier 7s quite reliably. If you don't use the gun depression of this tank, there is a huge area of 60mm on the vehicle, which unless your opponents are shooting up at you is not very thick at all. It has 124mm of armor. There is also a cupola on this tank, but at least it looks smaller than the old FV4202 cupola at tier 10, but it's 60mm thick, so watch out for that as well. If you angle your turret to the side armor is garbage, and so really the only time that this turret works, a lot like on a Centurion Action 10, is when you're on a ridgeline with 10 degrees of gun depression and your opponent's aiming up at you, and then the angles mean that you've got quite a good chance of ricocheting shots. Nevertheless, this is certainly a nerf to the armor of the vehicle. So let's see how the FV4202 stacks up to other tier 8 premium medium tanks. Here we have the Panzer 58 Mutz, the M46 Korean pattern, aka the Ripper pattern, and the AMX CDC. So the FV4202's DPM is the worst out of all of these tanks. It has 230 alpha damage, which is the lowest, but only by 10. standard for British 20-pounders, which is the joint highest on any Tier 8 medium tank in the game with the Centurion 1. So this means that you're not going to have to often fire the premium rounds that this vehicle gets, which is still very nice as well. It gets 250mm of penetration with its APCR, which should be more than enough to contest all of the tanks this can meet frontally. Now on to the bad news for the FV4202's gun. While its penetration is amazing, its aim time completely sucks, 2.6 seconds. And the thing is that its values aren't made up for on the dispersion. Its dispersion on the move is nearly twice as bad as the Ripper pattern. When turning the tank, twice as bad as the Ripper pattern, and its turret traverse is over twice as bad as the Ripper pattern and the Mutz. And if you were hoping that the tank would get usually very good British accuracy, well, that's not the case. It's 0.35, which is very disappointing. The tank also gets the highest amount of bloom after firing, of 4 rather than 3.5 on all of the other tanks. And let's not forget, this is the slowest Tier 8 medium tank in the game. This is not going to be able to outrun many heavy tanks, let alone keep up with other mediums, which can be very frustrating for when you're either trying to flank your opponents or you're simply trying to catch up to the enemy team to be able to do damage, which is what you're trying to do when you're playing your premiums. Make credits and experience, right? The horsepower to ton of this tank is by far the worst, by 5. And the tank also gets worse ground resistances than the Panzer 58 Mutz, which you have seen in a recent review. So not only does it have the worst top speed limit, but one of the worst horsepower to tons on any Tier 8 medium tank. The turret traverse is a standard 36, and the tank traverse is 40 degrees a second. The hull armor on the tank, while it's very well angled, is not even close compared to the Panzer 58 Mutz or the Korean pattern, but at least it has an advantage over the CDC. The turret armor is actually better, at least with regards to thickness, than any of these 3 tanks, but let's be honest, those 3 vehicles aren't renowned for their turret armor. And so how are you going to have to play the FV4202 if you want to be successful in this tank? I think the only real way to play this tank will be on ridgelines. You have to make use of the 10 degrees of gun depression this tank has, which means that these rather thin parts of your armor get very, very, very exaggerated with regards to their angling, which means that your opponents are very likely to ricochet off them. And hopefully then you can control the engagement for long enough to make your slow but reliable DPM work. Having some of the worst aim time and dispersion values on any Tier 8 medium tank recently, you're not going to be able to afford to move around and keep shooting. You really have to be static in this tank, and you're going to be static only having 35 kilometers an hour top speed limit. And so there you have it, the FV4202P, which is likely to be the worst Tier 8 premium tank in the game. But I guess that goes hand in hand with the fact that this is the easiest mission that Wargaming have ever put in the game to be able to get a Tier 8 premium for free. And so it's not surprising that they've had to nerf it so much that it's not really going to be that competitive, at least in my opinion. Nevertheless, as I previously highlighted, there is still going to be ways to use this tank effectively. Get yourself on a ridgeline, use that 10 degrees of gun depression to exaggerate the turret armor, and use your reliable 20-pounder to pick apart your opponents. This tank will certainly appeal to British medium tank drivers who want to accelerate their crew training, and also to free-to-play players who want to pick up the easiest ever Tier 8 premium for free vehicle that Wargaming have ever done. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, or maybe it was just useful to you. If it was, please consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the FV4202. Are you going to bother to complete the missions? Are you going to completely forget about this after seeing what the statistics of the vehicle are? Are you an old school FV4202 driver who loved this tank at Tier 10 and are frankly now just disgusted to see this husk of a vehicle at Tier 8? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.